Good evening, Cohasset. I'm Bobby Nahill, filming for 143 TV, and I'm here at Cohasset Library where we will go into Author Talks, an event where we will learn about 3 authors around the Boston area, upcoming and experienced, who have written their newest pieces. So let's take a look. I'm currently here at Cohasset Library for our event Author Talks, and Library Director, Miss Jackie Rafferty. So, Jackie, can you just tell us a little bit about the event and what we have here today?
We're very excited and proud of our Author Talks series. This is our second year, and what we have been able to do is convince extremely talented Massachusetts authors to come here to Cohasset and tell us all about their books and also speak about writing.
And how do you pick these authors, per se?
Well, we really just pay a lot of attention. Those of us on the committee, there's a program committee, and of course we're all avid readers, and we follow literature and the publishing world and Massachusetts authors. And we also are very grateful to the Massachusetts Center for the Book, because they have an annual awards program where the best writing is identified for anything published in a particular year by Massachusetts authors. And then there's an awards ceremony. And so we have great lists of Massachusetts authors. We go to their website. I often go to those awards programs and hear the authors speak. And we do a lot of reading. And then our chair of the committee, Trustee Mary Lou Lawrence, does a brilliant job. She's a gifted writer and communicator, and she does a brilliant job writing to the authors, contacting them, and convincing them to come. And so far it's worked really well.
It seems like she's done very well with these authors here today. And are there any other author talks this year or other events that are occurring this year at the library?
Yes, we have a full series. I believe this is the 4th of the year, and we go through May. And anyone interested in what programs are coming up next in the schedule can just go right to our website, cohassetlibrary.org. And we're very excited that the program this year is culminating with author Dennis Lehane. Not only will he be coming to speak, but we will be doing our One Town, One Book reading with Dennis Lehane.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We expect a large turnout that will obviously be beyond this meeting room.
And what has he written specifically, just so the viewers are aware?
Well, you know, he's written many, and he has a series, the Mystic River series, and The Given Day, and numerous books, too numerous to talk about, but they're all very highly regarded. He always garners great reviews by the professional reviewers, and he's a popular author that many people that either buy books or borrow them from the library like to read, so we always have multiple copies of his books, and we always have them in multiple formats so that people can either read the print or the unabridged audio. We wish we could have the e-books. Unfortunately, libraries are battling the publishers. They have not allowed libraries to have access to e-books, and if they do, they're charging exorbitant prices, and that's a battle that we're fighting on the national level. But sometimes the authors that we have come, we can get the e-books as well.
Okay. And I know that you've worked at numerous libraries before Cohasset. What has this experience been like with Cohasset Library?
I have a long career in libraries. I started out working in academic libraries and loved it very much, but then went on to become the director of the Hanson Library and from Hanson here. And I have to say I love working in Cohasset and for Cohasset because it is such a literate community. And I love the fact that the library is extremely busy, that every day it's filled with people of all ages, and that they're doing so much reading. It's such an intelligent, literate community, and they love their library, and that's why it's exciting to have this program, because they appreciate the fact that they can come right here locally to their library instead of having to drive into Boston to a bookstore or some larger venue. They can hear the best authors right here in their own library.
And I hear that you've taken your library skills nationally. You're on a national club or program?
I have. I've done a lot of work on the state and national level as both the president of the Massachusetts Library Association and as the Massachusetts counselor to the American Library Association. And specifically the work that has been the most important that I feel gratified by is to fight the fight on a national level that will ensure, we hope, that public libraries can offer ebooks to their patrons and have the full range of all ebooks that are published, not just the ones that they decide we can have and not at exorbitant prices. So the battle continues. The landscape is changing dramatically. There's a lot of fears due to what's going to happen with digitization and ebooks and what will it do to print, and there's a market share grab. But libraries have to be able to continue to offer access to everything that is published to all people.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Once again, Miss Jackie Rafferty, Library Director, and now we'll go and talk to the authors. Thank you. So now I'm currently with the three authors. So the first is Edith Pearlman, who wrote Binocular Vision. The second is Madeline Miller, who wrote The Song of Achilles. And the third is Margot Livesey, who wrote The Flight of Gemma Hardy. So just to begin, for the viewers at home who haven't read your story yet, do you mind just giving a brief summary of what they're all about?
Well, my stories are about people in situations that trouble them, and people in uncomfortable marriages, and children with impossible parents, familiar things like that.
My novel is a retelling of the myths around the Greek hero Achilles from the perspective of his best friend and lover Patroclus. It's a story of love and adventure.
The Flight of Gemma Hardy is a reimagining of Jane Eyre set in 1960s Scotland and follows the story of my heroine from the ages of 10 to 18.
And with all those titles, I'm sure that you have somewhat of an idea that they're very worldly novels and short stories. So can you three just describe your inspirations for your writing and how you got started with these specific stories?
Well, I get my inspiration from faces on the street, people on the subway, conversations overheard, other people's stories. Anywhere I can find an inspiration, I pick it up.
I have loved the ancient Greek and Roman stories since I was a little girl. My mother used to read them to me as bedtime stories, and so they were something I continued to study, and they stayed with me. And Achilles was always one of my favorite characters because I feel like he is so young and so tragic and so terribly flawed.
In Scotland, and I identified madly with Jane, who doesn't. And many years later, teaching in America, I was struck by how readers and writers here identify with Jane Eyre, and I thought how interesting it would be to try to tell this universal story again, much closer to the present.
And now, after listening to the three of you speak about how you came about writing these stories, just to give an idea for the viewers what you exactly went through in regards to the writing process, the editing, the revising, can you just go a little bit about that and just talk about how you went through the process? I know you spent particularly 10 years writing that story. I can only imagine, if there are any highlights or low points, just describing, what that experience was like as an author and just as a writer in general.
Go ahead.
Oh, me first? Okay.
Yeah.
So it did take me 10 years to write the book. About halfway through, I had sort of a completed draft that I ended up throwing out and starting over from scratch. So there were some dark moments there, but it was absolutely the right thing to do, because I think that part of writing is rewriting and being willing to just cross out, get rid of, totally start over, and that I needed to write that first draft and get rid of it in order to write the final version.
I write my stories somewhat the way a high school student writes an essay. I use 3x5 cards, I make an outline, I make a first draft, I make a second draft, I make a third draft. How much time have you? I make many, 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 many drafts.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, I've written a number of novels. I wrote one novel in 3 weeks, and another novel over a period of 12 years, besting you 2 years, my very own Trojan War. But I aspire to write a novel in 3 to 4 years, and that's about how long it took me to write The Flight of Gemma Hardy, with a good deal of that time being spent on revising and editing.
And when the three of you are editing and revising, do you just feel it inside you, like this doesn't belong, or I feel like I should keep this? Is there just something inside you that tells you, what to take out and what to change? Do you look at it through the viewer's perspective or through your own, what you think makes a good story, or what you think the reader will think is a good story?
That is such a good question. Part of what I think troubles me and probably my fellow writers is that I will revise something and think, oh, this is okay now. And then 2 weeks later, I'll look at it again and I think, what was I thinking? This is far from okay. So I never entirely trust my own judgment. But I do I have readers I trust, and I do end up reading everything I write aloud, which I actually find very helpful. Because I seem to be able to catch things when I'm listening that I can't when I'm just reading silently.
Yes, I think for me the trick is to approach the material in as many different frames of mind as possible, because I agree that sometimes you'll fix something and you'll think, oh, that's fixed, and you go back to it a few days later and you think, oh my gosh, it was worse than it ever was. And so I think it's about kind of coming back to it in a different place, a different time of day, sometimes even going to a different room helps. Reading it out loud, absolutely. That really forces you to slow down and hear what you're saying, feel the pacing, and just, and then having some readers that you really trust who will tell you the honest truth about it.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. Reading out loud is a great help in a short story. You find so many infelicities and repetitions of words and unconscious rhymes. And also having a ruthless other person to tell you what's wrong.
And when you almost come to a wrap of the novel, when do you know this is the end and I can send this off to my publisher? When do you realize that happens, and what do you feel when that finally happens?
I don't know if the word finally belongs for me in any part of the writing process, but usually I'm guided by a dear friend, a fellow writer, Andrea Barrett, and she'll say this is ready for you to send to your agent. And my agent is an extremely direct person, and sometimes she'll agree with Andrea's assessment, and sometimes she has a different opinion.
I understand.
Yes, I think readers can really help with that. Those close readers. I think also that I forget which author said this, but someone said, when I've changed the comma to a semicolon, back to a comma, back to a semicolon 3 times, I'm finished. And that's sort of how I feel. That when I feel like I'm rearranging the same edit back and forth enough times, I'm sort of like, okay, now I'm just fiddling. I'm done.
Certainly, there is no such thing as finally. I revise after a story comes back in galleys, and I revise if it goes into another edition or if it goes into an anthology, and I expect to revise in the grave.
With your typewriter.
And, with all of the efforts that you've put in these pieces of literature. Can the readers expect anything in the upcoming future? Just briefly.
Well, I think Edith is publishing wonderful stories, probably even as we speak. And Madeline and I are at work on new novels. But certainly couldn't say when mine would see the light of day. I mean, I hope later this century.
Agreed. Agreed.
Since I write short things, I do have the chance to write them and publish them at a greater rate.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a fantastic evening listening to you, and I will definitely read all of your books. I'm so excited about it. So once again, Edith, Madeline, and Margot, if you want to look into their novels, they're at the Cohasset Public Library, or you can just go to cohassetpubliclibrary.org to check them out. Once again, thank you very much, and have a good night. Bobby Nahill filming for 143 TV.